Could the ACC take a step forward in 2021 in becoming one of the dominant conferences right up there with the SEC and the Big Ten? Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Gold and Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day. Don't forget, guys, Gold and Blue Dude does have a sponsor. It's called Tri-State Wood Sketch, and you can find them on the internet at www.tristatewoodssketch.com. He does amazing work. He can do any shape or size. All you have to do is send him the picture that you want on there. And if you mention that Gold and Blue Dude sent you, he'll take 20% off. Everybody knows that the SEC and the Big Ten are the premier conferences in college football. They are the elite conferences. But I think the ACC is closer to that level than people realize. The problem is the ACC has taken a step backwards in the last 5 years, but they could correct that and take a step forward in 2021. The key to that for the ACC are those mid-level teams. Every conference has their dominant teams. In the SEC, it's Alabama, and then if you want to go in the East Division, it's Georgia. Every once in a while, you'll have an LSU or a Florida challenge, but really it's Alabama and Georgia. Same for the Big 12, Oklahoma, and then this year it's Iowa State, but usually that rotates either Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas. Then in the Big 10, it's Ohio State and pretty much Wisconsin in the Big 10 West. But you have teams like Iowa and Penn State that try to be at that level every once in a while. But we all know in the ACC, it's Clemson and pretty much everybody else. But I'd say right below Clemson is North Carolina and Miami. And I think those two teams do have the talent this year to give Clemson a run for their money for the ACC title. But I wanted to talk about the mid-level part of the ACC in this video. For the ACC Atlantic, Wake Forest and Syracuse, they're lost cause. They're just bad teams. So the four teams I want to focus on in the Atlantic: Louisville, Florida State, NC State, and Boston College. Let's go back 5 years in 2016. Louisville was 9-4, Florida State was 10-3, NC State 7-6, and Boston College 7-6. Fast forward to 2020, Louisville 4-7, Florida State 3-6, NC State 8-4, they had a good year, and Boston College 6-5. But that was a COVID year, so let's look at 2019. Louisville 8-5, that's not bad. Florida State 6-7, NC State 4-8, and Boston College 6-7. So there you go. There's your gap. Those four teams need to step it up a notch. I think one of the keys are the non-conference games. For Louisville this year, they have Ole Miss, Eastern Kentucky, UCF, and Kentucky. So they have an opportunity in their non-conference to prove their worth. For Florida State, they get Notre Dame. I'm not counting Notre Dame in the ACC. Jacksonville State, UMass, and at Florida. So they have two really good opportunities to prove themselves as well. NC State, they get USF, South Florida, at Mississippi State, Furman, Louisiana Tech. That's not a great out-of-conference at all. NC State needs to do really, really well in the ACC. Boston College, Colgate, UMass, at Temple, Missouri. That's a horrible non-conference. You got to schedule better than that. So it will be interesting to see how these teams do against each other. And I think the biggest game in the ACC Atlantic, not involving Clemson, would be Louisville and Florida State. I think those two teams are close to having breakout years. Now, for the Coastal, Duke, lost cause right now. Maybe they can get better, but right now I'm counting them as the bad team in the Coastal. So the four teams that could help close the gap for the ACC in the Coastal Division: Georgia Tech, Pitt, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. In 2016, Georgia Tech was 9-4, Pitt was 8-5, Virginia was terrible, 2-10, and Virginia Tech was 10-4. Yeah, they had a 10-win season in 2016. Fast forward to 2020, Georgia Tech was 3-9, Pitt was 6-5, Virginia 5-5, and Virginia Tech 5-6. That's a big regress. Okay, so it was COVID. Let's look at 2019. Georgia Tech 3-9, Pitt 8-5. That's a little bit better. Virginia had a good year, 9-5, and then Virginia Tech 8-5. So that's better, but still compared to 2016, not as good. Out of that group, the two teams that I think are closer to Miami and North Carolina's level is Georgia Tech and Pitt. So the biggest game for me in the Coastal, not involving Miami and North Carolina, will be Georgia Tech and Pitt. That's the one that I'm looking at. That could decide if one of those teams has an 8 or 9 win season. So if you think about it, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, those 3 teams are doing their part to try to help the ACC to be an elite conference. It's that middle group that needs to step it up and do better. I think Georgia Tech has a halfway decent out-of-conference schedule. They got Northern Illinois, Kennesaw State, Notre Dame, and Georgia. So those last 2 out-of-conference games, Notre Dame and Georgia, those are going to be tough out-of-conference games. I think you lose both of them, but at least you're giving it a shot. For Pitt, they have UMass, at Tennessee, Western Michigan, and New Hampshire. That's a terrible out-of-conference, Pitt. You have to do better than that. At Tennessee is not a good win because I do think you will beat Tennessee. This is a trash out-of-conference. I do have to give credit to Virginia for their out-of-conference. They get William and Mary, Illinois, at BYU, and Notre Dame. That's a pretty good out-of-conference. For Virginia Tech, Middle Tennessee, at West Virginia, Richmond, and Notre Dame. So that's 2 really good out-of-conference games, at West Virginia and Notre Dame. I think you lose both of them, but at least you're trying to give yourself an opportunity to prove yourself. I do think the ACC will be better this year than they have been in the past 3 years, but how much better? How close can they get to the SEC and the Big Ten? It's up to those 8 teams. Louisville, Florida State, NC State, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.